Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to Growing Money for Your Agricultural Enterprise. What it takes to get to yes. My name is Kelly Hepler, and I am the agritourism specialist for IENTA. I have been with them for a little more than a year now and was brought on to work to develop agritourism programs within Indian country. And I have worked in agritourism for over 25 years. Joining me today, I will give you more bio on them as we move forward, but joining us today, we have Alyssa Welker. She's a senior manager of business operations and account management for Stewart. Bob Marshall, consultant of Marshall Business Advisors, and Melissa Curley. She's with the Cheyenne River Sioux tribe, and she's a senior loan officer for Ocupane. Next slide. This is the mission statement for IENTA: to define, introduce, grow, and sustain American Indian, Alaska Native, and Native Hawaiian tourism that honors traditions and values. In today's session, you will learn what funders are looking for and how to prepare yourself for getting that loan, getting to the yes. For those of you who are unfamiliar with IENTA, IENTA provides the technical assistance and training needed to keep our communities engaged in tourism and hospitality, facilitate conversations on the economic and cultural importance of a healthy hospitality industry, highlight the importance of visiting authentic American Indian, Alaska Native, and Native Hawaiian destinations, and to generate awareness, interest, and demand for these destinations to domestic and international travelers, the travel trade, and media. With distinctive cultural heritage, culinary, and agritourism offerings available throughout America's indigenous lands, tourism provides strong economic benefits for these communities. Next slide. Just so we have kind of an understanding from our point of view for today's conversation, we like this quote from the Agritourism Master Plan for the Clackamas County in Oregon. The act of visiting a working farm or any agricultural, horticultural, or agribusiness operation for enjoyment, education, or participation in the activities of the farm or operation. The one thing that's kind of missing from that is, of course, aquaculture, but we'll find a better one. But that is basically, you do need to visit the farm or ranch. So let's go ahead and get started. With me today, go ahead and then change the slide, is Alyssa Welker. Alyssa Welker has spent her career working in a variety of roles for food and agriculture startup businesses. Alyssa spent several years at an agricultural technology startup company in Silicon Valley working on sustainability programs for large-scale producers. She made the decision to pivot and focus her energy on supporting more regional and local food production. After her time in Silicon Valley, she spent a little over a year traveling, consulting, working on farms, and writing about her experience. Alyssa found Stuart through her consulting work and is now Stewart's senior account manager. She manages customer relationships and the processes and systems used by the Stewart diligence team. Alyssa enjoys bringing her background in food systems, social justice, and business operations to her day-to-day work. Alyssa is now going to share her screen and give us her presentation.
Awesome. Good morning, everybody, or afternoon if you're on Eastern time. Let me pull up this deck. Okay, awesome. So just a bit of background. I'll start with kind of who Stewart is, why we exist, and then we'll go into kind of more of what we're looking for when we are going through the diligence process with agricultural businesses. What are the documents that we need? What are the specific frameworks that we're looking at? And go from there. We are unique in that we are exclusively funding farms, ranchers, fisheries. We're only working in the agricultural side. So our diligence process really includes not just the financial diligence that a lot of every lending institution has, but also kind of the agricultural diligence as well. So as Kelly mentioned, I've been at Stewart for the past 3 years and have really loved kind of transitioning from working at more larger scale grain growers to I've had the chance to work with oystermen and ranchers and food hubs and just kind of the whole range of local and regional food systems, which has been a ton of fun. So Stewart exists, I think initially when we started, we realized, okay, there's all of this infrastructure and financing for the large commodity agricultural system, but oftentimes kind of small growers or producers that are doing something different, particularly for local food systems, don't have the same clear route and access to capital that larger commodity grain or commodity crop growers have. And so Stewart was started to solve this problem. We really wanted to help growers who don't have access to this conventional ag financing find a way to a yes with a lender. We definitely have kind of we have our set underwriting standards, but we are much more flexible than other lenders in that, like I said, we're not just looking at current date financials, we're looking at projections, and I'll kind of go through what we're looking at later on in this presentation. But really, we're trying to be a different type of lender that takes a more holistic approach to viewing a regenerative or sustainable agriculture business, as opposed to just, okay, what's the asset, what's the loan to value ratio, and that's all that many lenders look at. One of the things, Stewart talks about, we're funding regenerative and sustainable agriculture. I think one of the things that's really interesting about kind of the buzzword or term regenerative these days is it's all about, it's the new term, particularly more on kind of the agriculture technology side. But kind of regenerative agriculture has been a way of farming and kind of systems and production for Native people like way, way back. And so it's, just interesting to call that out and important to call that out, especially as that's kind of the new term, that many people use. We, Stewart, have funded a lot of the businesses we work with have pretty diversified businesses. So we're often funding businesses that have, let's say, a meat or poultry arm where they're selling direct to consumer or some wholesale. And they also have an agritourism component of their business, through Airbnb or, through other means to kind of bring people to the farm. And often what we found is really that these farm stays and these agritourism components of the business are a huge part of what can make these kind of human scale, smaller scale farm and agriculture businesses cash flow. It's really, margins are so thin in whether it be diversified veg production or meat production. And so having agritourism as a component of your farm business plan, we found can actually be really helpful in kind of the holistic farm business plan and helping a business cash flow. So what kind of the meat of this presentation, what I want to talk through is, what does Stewart look for when we're going through our underwriting process? What are the documents that we request? What are we looking for in applicants? And this is kind of in general, I would say, Stewart, we're working with a very small team and typically working on larger kind of processing and infrastructure projects. So for example, we've been working with some meat processing projects and local grain processing, but we still do some funding for individual farmers, ranchers, fishers, and a lot of those include agritourism components to their business. So I would say, the first thing that Stewart really does that's quite different than other lenders is we are really looking at a holistic business review. So oftentimes the producers that are coming to us, maybe they have 3 or 4 different technically LLCs where they're operating a meat company. They're also operating an agritourism enterprise. And maybe they're doing, they have value added products. In our underwriting process, we're taking a holistic look at the business. So we want to see, okay, if one of those business lines isn't cash flowing well, but another is, how does everything work together? We look at it as a holistic system, taking into account all of the different kind of enterprises that are a part of that business. So that's kind of typically our first step, is really just getting an understanding of the agricultural business as a whole. What are all the different enterprises involved, and understanding how they all work together. In terms of financial documents, kind of the base financial documents that we expect potential borrowers or applicants to come with are historical P&Ls or profit and loss statements, enterprise budgets, projections for the future. Typically, we want a minimum of 3 to 5 years out, as well as a prepared balance sheet. So hold on. I'm clicking too many times and it's going forward. There we go. So P&Ls, so a profit and loss statement, it's similar to a balance sheet, but it deals with cash flow, where it's coming from, how it's being used, and having an idea, it helps give you an idea of your gross revenue. And what we use is, we're really looking at, of course, we want to see a business be profitable or already being profitable when they come to Steward. However, oftentimes we're funding businesses that need capital for growth in order to get to a scale where they can be profitable. So Stewart isn't, if you're still in the red as a business, but you have a clear projections and plan for growth, it doesn't necessarily mean that you can't get a loan from Stewart. We are looking at what is, historical P&Ls, historical taxes, current day, but then also really what's projections. And ultimately, P&L statements can really help you generate your profit margin and understand your business as a whole, and understand what money is staying in the business once you kind of take out what, payments for inputs. Something else we really look to, and this gets into kind of like the holistic look of the business that I talked about earlier, is it's really helpful to have enterprise budgets. This is something, I have an agricultural background, but not a farming background. And so we actually have a former farmer. Well, he still does some growing. He wouldn't want me to call him a former farmer because he's still is growing some veg and meat. But he, really stresses the importance of having enterprise budgets. And so if you are doing, for example, we worked with a grower that had sold wholesale pasture raised chickens. They also had like a value added like meat and chicken and waffle business. And then they were also doing vegetables. This grower didn't know how those three things were working together. How is the chicken and waffles performing? How is the chicken wholesale performing? How are the vegetables performing? Oftentimes when you have all these separate businesses, if you just put it all into one budget, it's really hard to tell what is actually performing. And so we're also really looking for, okay, if you have these different verticals and different kind of business lines underneath your business, building out budgets specifically for those verticals so you can really understand, maybe pasture-raised chicken, just like pasture-raised poultry, just isn't cash flowing. And understanding that can then help you pivot and figure out where to put more of your energy into more profitable enterprises. So having those enterprise budgets can be extremely helpful, especially if you're a diversified business and have kind of all these different components of your business. Finally, we're also looking for, on the financial side, a balance sheet, which is just a summary of your business assets and liabilities. And then this balance sheet helps calculate your debt to asset ratio, which is very important for lenders. We're typically, we have minimum thresholds for both loan to value ratio, which is similar to a debt to asset ratio, as well as looking at debt service coverage ratio, which is looking at your future. Basically, can your cash flow cover the debt payments that you're looking at taking on. This is just an example balance sheet. If you are a little bit later in this presentation, I'll go through kind of some different, how to find the resources to help put together P&L projections, balance sheets, and what that looks like. Other organization or other kind of organizational documents that we look for. We do like to see a business plan, and this doesn't have to be a 30 to 40 page, perfectly polished, clean document. We're just looking to see that our applicants have kind of put in the work into thinking through what is their business, what is their growth strategy, how does it operate, and kind of have put that onto paper to solidify and kind of really shown that they've done the thinking around that. Something else that we like to see is just an understanding of the organization and team management, whether it's just you and a partner, or whether you have employees, or whether you plan to hire employees in the future. It's really helpful to understand who is handling what on the farm or ranch or business, and how do things get done. And that's really helpful. Same with having a holistic farm management plan. This gets a little bit more into the realm of understanding how your farm and farm enterprises work together as a whole, but kind of having an understanding of those enterprises, how they work together, how they make up the business as a whole, can be really helpful, as well as understanding your growth plan. Like I said, do you think you're going to hire employees in 2 to 5 years? And what does that look like? And what, threshold do you need to get to then make it worth hiring employees, and making sure that you have just really kind of thought through that growth plan. Kind of quick description of a business plan. And again, this is something that you can search this online, and you'll find plenty of templates. But kind of typically it's, an executive summary, a description of your company, the products and services you offer, a market analysis, or kind of like showing like, do you have the customers to support the growth that you plan, strategy implementation, organization and management, as well as often business plans do include some of those financial plans and projections from the documents, kind of summary of the financial documents that I mentioned earlier that we look for in the application process. Growth plan. We also this can sometimes be a part of your business plan, sometimes separate. In general, we think about farms can increase their income in kind of 3 distinct ways. So it's either increasing efficiency to cut costs, or increasing like the intensity, or kind of, how many animals, if you have, more room for growth on that area per acre, like increasing the intensity of grazing, for example, or if you're market gardening, increasing the way you're planting crops, and or scale. So just expanding land, getting those efficiencies from scale. In order to kind of do any of these things in growth, you often need capital to grow. And accessing that capital, sometimes it can be from debt from a company like Stewart or CDFI or a local bank. But oftentimes there's also, there's grant programs, which are hard to access. But there are definitely grant writers out there that can help with this. And, grants, it's a grant. There's no repayments, which is really great. And oftentimes the businesses we're working with, we're basically putting together a capital stack that's a combination of all 3 of these. Oftentimes we're helping them apply for grants, getting grants to come in. We do need, oftentimes some equity, or just kind of money that they're bringing to the business, or an outside equity partner is bringing in. And then debt can make up a percentage of that capital stack as a whole, as well, based on, what are the assets and liabilities of the business. So, I just talked about all of these things that we love for applicants to have before they come to Stewart to apply for a loan. How do you put all these things together? I think there'll be a couple presenters later in this webinar that talks a little bit more about these, but there's definitely technical support out there to help you put together these documents. Don't see the list and be like, oh my gosh, I don't have any of those things, I can't apply for a loan. It's a process. There's one in terms of getting just kind of like on the ground experience. If you're new or a beginning farmer or rancher, there's certainly apprenticeship programs out there. If you are, have an existing business and you're looking to just kind of get a second eyes on your business plan or help put together a business plan, there's definitely local technical support organizations out there, even small business association. Oftentimes these are often kind of very local orgs that can really help you put together this plan. There's also federal programs, through the USDA and FSA. There's, a lot of resources online. There's often, local resources through the FSA and USDA as well. And then there's also kind of specific educational programs through either land grant universities, as well as there's like a growing number of kind of small programs that are kind of made to help you put your business plan together and kind of to help you, I know a lot of folks start with just a sole proprietorship, have this plan to grow. And then once they're really working, wanting to get to a profitable enterprise and put together that plan, kind of going through one of these training programs to help put together all the material that I just mentioned. So I guess main takeaway from all of that, I just talked about all of these things that you need, but there is technical support out there. So I think, really leaning on and utilizing technical support providers to help you build a business plan and get financials ready to take to lenders is a really key step and will be very helpful if you do that ahead of approaching lender rather than after, because often lenders do want to see this kind of work and intention ahead of time prior to application. Very quickly, we'll just kind of go over a little bit more about who Stewart is, because we're pretty unique in that we are a non-bank financial institution. And the way that our funding model works, Steward is the lender. We go through the diligence process, we do the underwriting, we're the lender of record, but how all of our loans are basically funded is through individuals that want to support regenerative and sustainable agriculture businesses. So we do the underwriting, and then we actually have a technology platform on the back end where we market a project, and then individuals, fund basically by pieces of the loan that we are lending to agricultural businesses, and they're then the ones receiving the interest in return. So we're pretty unique in that we're not a bank, we're not a CDFI. And we do have this kind of technology component that's really about also kind of storytelling and bringing in a community of folks that aren't growers or ranchers, but really want to support local and regenerative food businesses. We fund everything from farms, ranches, fisheries, producers. And then, as I mentioned, we're doing a lot more infrastructure projects. We're working on a grain processing facility. We're working on a vertically integrated meat company. And so really kind of run the gamut and just really about kind of rebuilding local and regional food systems. This is just what I explained earlier, kind of where the borrower, Stewart is the lender, and then individual lenders or individual folks come in, participate in the loan, and they're the ones that get repaid. So I will stop there. I know I have a couple of other wonderful presenters, but happy to answer any questions either now or later.
Yeah, we can do some Q&A towards the end and get everybody's questions going in. Thank you. That was really good, Alyssa. I appreciate your presentation, and your photos are beautiful. So with that, thank you, Alyssa. And now I'm going to introduce you to Bob Marshall. He is going to talk to you as a business consultant. Bob has been a small business consultant for over 26 years, 19 of those with the Colorado Small Business Development Centers in North Central and West Central Colorado. Bob has helped start, grow, or close 2,000 plus small businesses, and he knows how not to start a small business, and he knows where to get the money. Bob, go ahead and take it over.
Great. Thank you, Kelly. And Alyssa, perfect. What a segue. This is great.
Yes.
A little bit about myself. I grew up on the Jersey Shore, Seaside Heights, Toms River. And do you remember that stupid sitcom or whatever it was with Snooki and The Situation? That's my territory. And I came out west and I got involved in business consulting in college. And from there, became the director of the North Central Small Business Development Centers. Now, this is something to come from the Jersey Shore and then have to serve Breckenridge, Vale, Aspen, Steamboat, Winter Park. Fantastic. I was on top of the world. But it also showed me that some people shouldn't be in business and that you can test drive being in business yourself. Lenders are going to require some things of you, but there are some things that you should do for yourself and your business. And anytime you are branching out and expanding, I had to stop many people. I would say over the years and over 2,000 clients, I've discouraged more people from starting a business than I've expanded because they weren't ready. And a lot of people were there to start a new operation because they were out of a job. Not a good reason to start a business. But many times in resort towns like a Vail, a Steamboat, and Aspen, you try to stop the 11th t-shirt shop because the 11th t-shirt shop doesn't hurt just the guy you're competing against, it hurts everybody. There's only a finite amount of dollars in any community. And when you start stretching, for example, in Steamboat, I lived there, we had 78 restaurants and we turned a third of them over every year. A third. That's unbelievable to me that somebody would go in and be totally broke, busted after a year. Well, here's some stats that will really scare you. 80% of all small businesses or new ventures fail in 5 years. 5. Look at that. Half of those that fail in the first year because they run out of cash. Now that's scary to me. And why you've got to be on the reins when you start a business, and you have to know what people who are going to back you require. So let me talk to you about what Kelly's doing with agritourism is very interesting to me. We have an operation here in Western Colorado where you can actually float in by raft with an outfitter and go to a cherry orchard and pick your own cherries and then float out. Now that sounds like something from the Barbie movie. I mean, it's fantasy land. It's wonderful. But the ability to think outside of what you're doing now is everything. And anytime you start something which is not what you're doing right now, you need to recast your forecasts and your projections. So what we'll do, Kelly, can you bring up the first one, or whoever's in charge, the income statement projections? I'm going to scare you. Most people, because they're human,
Which one do you want first? The
income statement projection. And see if that works. And in the meantime, I'll tell you that most people fail because it's not because of energy, and it's not because of desperation. It's because they sell what they want to sell. And that's a mistake. Most people do not know how to assess demand. Think about that. 2 words, assess demand. It doesn't matter what you sell. If you make a profit, then you've won. We're in the business to make money. And a lot of people sell what they want to sell. And I'm suggesting that all marketing is designed, 90% of it at least, is on testing markets and creating markets and being observant, and know that you have to sell what people want to buy. That's it. I mean, that's the bottom line. And buy low, sell high. Why did I go to school for 5 years to learn buy low, sell high? Because that's there. It's already there for all of us. What you're looking at right now is a hypothetical thing I use for the USDA Forest Service in their fee demonstration programs. This is called Fearless Jeep Tours. And don't freak out, okay? It's just the same thing 12 times. Each one of those columns is a profit and loss. This is cash flow, Kelly. I need the income statement projection. If you can do that. We'll get to this. This one happens after the first one, which is the income statement projection. Anybody there?
Can you see it?
Yeah, I see the cash flow projection, but I'm looking for the income statement projection, the other one. Anyway, so in test driving this, there's a couple things to remember. The art of Sun Tzu and the art of a war. Have you followed that much? These projections that we do allow you to test drive any idea that you have ever had and ever will have, and that your uncle, the drunk one at Thanksgiving, has. You can say, here, fill this out, and it will tell you if you should pull the trigger on that business or not. And that's why I like what lenders and investors require. Can you find that income statement projection spreadsheet?
Well, what's on mine is the projected income statement for Fearless Jeep Tours.
No, mine says monthly cash flow projections. What
You
does
might
everybody else do?
stop, share, Kelly, and then share again.
Okay, thank you.
And then share again. Every single battle in Sun Tzu, the art of war, is won or lost before it's waged. And that's why you use something like this. The lender requires it, but for you to do it yourself, you don't have to waste any money. And if over half the businesses fail in 5 years, then we've allowed reverse economic development. We go out and we're out of a job and we convince our niece and our friends to invest in the business, and we start and they're employees and you don't pay your taxes and you're out of business in the first year because you're out of cash and you probably haven't paid your payroll taxes. And at that point, you've gone backwards 2 steps. You've taken a step forward and gone backwards 2 steps. So reverse economic development is real. So stopping people and having them do these exercises first is everything, because if they can convince themselves that this is what they really should do, then they've already done the work for the lender, which is the most tedious thing that you can imagine, is filling this out. Now, every column is a profit and loss statement, otherwise known as an income statement. They are synonymous. And what you're trying to do is fill in the blanks. It's easy to fill in the operating expenses. Look at the bottom of this, operating expenses. That's not hard. You can figure out what it costs you for everything: heat, light, power, water, fuel, insurance, everything. When you go up, you start to model the revenues for this. And you're right, very good. You see the revenues, and then you immediately back off the cost of those sales. That gives you the most important thing possible, called the gross profit margin. And that gross profit margin is what will save you or will sink you. There's no question. Every battle is won or lost before it's waged. You have to have enough gross profit there after you've taken your revenues and your cost of sales out to cover your overhead. And if you don't, you're out of business, as most are. So this exercise, required by lenders in a business plan, also, we're going to move to a cash flow here in a second. This guy here will tell you that can you put that back up? I can't hear you either. Okay, yeah, okay. This will tell you that you're going to have lean months and you're going to have some months where you might want to crank up your advertising. You might want to cut some of your staff for the season. You can change it. But the idea is you fill in all your operating expenses. You determine how much your markup is going to be. And that markup determines your gross profit margin. And then you go up top to the very top, scroll up to the top, and just start playing with those numbers and make it work. If it doesn't work, you don't pull the trigger. Now, this is the fun part of it, is you lay this out, you've got your expenses, you know how much you're going to mark up your stuff, which may change when you put in all the revenues at the top. But when you do this, you find out that, oh my goodness, I'm going to get $300,000. This is typical, $300,000 in revenue for the year, and I'm going to keep about 5% of it. That's 15 grand. And that should scare you. And you can do this before you lose that money and your friend's money and your niece's money. You can do this. This is a wonderful tool. And it's just the same thing 12 times. The spreadsheet, which we'll make available to you, you can just plug in your own numbers, call it whatever you want. I've got one called Mosquito Lake that we did for the Forest Service. And they love Mosquito Lake. I don't know why they didn't like No Fear Jeep tours, but that's the example that we've used. And this thing can go in any direction you want. But if you cannot make this work, if you push yourself away from the chair and say, I'm going to make $500,000 and I'm going to be able to keep 10% of it, 50 grand, you're crazy. You don't pull the trigger. What you do is you try to make this fail. Think about that. You try to make this fail. And if you have a hard time, you pull the trigger. It's a wonderful tool. Now, if you can bring up cash flow, that would help. Because the lender or the investor and yourself should know that making a profit doesn't mean you're going to make it in business. You can have a giant accounts receivable for a year. Nobody pays you. You sell a lot of stuff, but nobody pays you. So how do you survive? Well, that's why the lender and the investor require not only income statement projections, but then you take that, and once you have tried to make it fail and you are discouraged and you can't, and you want to pull the trigger on this, they're going to have you fill this out. I became an SBA loan packager back in the 80s and 90s. And these are their forms. This is their actual form for cash flow, and so was Alyssa's. He used the same thing. These are required, and they're not hard. They're tedious, but they're not hard. And they will tell you whether to start the business or not. Whether it's, oh, I grow cherries and I usually wholesale them all out, but now I can get 3 times the gross margin because I've got a raft company bringing customers to me and they're going to pick them. And we built that into their rafting price. I mean, it's so smart to think of agritourism. If you're in agriculture to begin with, there are so many different ways to add on these outside sideline kind of businesses that are very profitable. But every single time you decide a new line, you run it through this income statement projections and turn them into cash flow and see, because cash is not profit. If you don't get paid for what you sold, you're out of business, like more than half of all businesses. Now, I won't go much further. The point is, are you bankable yourself? This is when it comes to lenders and investors. After you do all of this, and I've reviewed thousands of business plans and I've written hundreds. And I know all of the components of a business plan, but this is the heart right here, the statistics and the finances and the projections. And when it comes to you, in most cases, even though you do have some programs federally and statewide, which take care of disadvantaged borrowers pretty well, And we're talking about that population, our small loans to disadvantaged borrowers. When the Fed wants to look at these things, they're going to apply the same kinds of guidelines as they do for a typical lender, and they might even get tougher. These kinds of machinations, I don't know what you would call them, these exercises are so valuable, and most people don't realize how valuable they are. But when it comes to you borrowing money, you're going to have to either give up part of your profit if you make any, or you're going to have to personally guarantee that loan yourself, because they're going to come after you after the whole thing folds, because most fold. So they're going to make bomb-proof sure up front that you are who you are. I'm about to cough. Excuse me. Grants are available, but they're hard. You have some, others don't. You do. I think I'll end it there,
All right.
and we'll move on. I'll cough a little bit on the side, and then we can talk later.
All right. Thank you, Bob, for that. And thank you for all of you for hanging in there while I figure out the screen sharing issue. I hope you were able to see his sheets. Next up on our list is Melissa Curley. She's a Cheyenne River Sioux tribe member and comes to us through Akinta. I always say that wrong. Ocupan. Sorry, Melissa. And she's got a little slideshow she's going to put together for us. Let me tell you a little bit about her and then we'll get started. Melissa is the senior loan officer with Ocupan and is an enrolled member of the Cheyenne River Sioux tribe. She resides in a small native community within the reservation boundaries with her husband, Lucas, and 3 children, Zayden, Shade, and Addison. Pardon me if I've mispronounced those. I think that's correct. Alyssa has been part of the Ocupan team for 3 years. She started as a loan officer and is now the senior loan officer. Alyssa attended college at St. Paul Community College, where she received her associate degree in business in 2020. Then went on to graduate from Metropolitan State University with her bachelor's of science in business management in 2022. Melissa found her true passion working in the financial industry in 2011. With her professional and personal experiences, she understands the integral role that native ag producers play in the tribal nations' economies and has seen firsthand the impact that it can have within the native community. Thank you, Melissa, and we'll let you go ahead and advance the slide and let Melissa get started.
Good morning, everybody. Good afternoon for those on the eastern side of this, the US. Again, my name is Melissa Curley. I'm the senior loan officer for Ocupone. We are a Native Community Development Financial Institution. Short version is CDFI that has been thrown out there. We were founded in 2017. That's when we actually got created. And then in 2019 is when we actually started doing our first lending. Next slide, please. Our mission is to transform native agriculture and food economies by delivering creative capital, leading paradigm changes, and enhancing producer prosperity across Indian country. We do provide agriculture loans all throughout the US to native producers across Indian country, and we also pair that with technical assistance. Next slide, please. Ocupone, in short, is the Lakota word for working together in a cooperative effort, and it is very reflective on our lending philosophy. To better explain CDFIs, we're kind of like banks. We're just not the depository side of it. We do provide ag loans with the technical assistance. We can help with the business and goal planning, succession planning. We offer financial literacy training. We created our first rancher curriculum, and we are continuing to create more curriculums dedicated to the youth and business entities and trucking. While there are laws that we have to follow, we are unregulated, which allows us to be flexible and innovative with all of our loans here at Ocupan. So if you have a plan or just an idea that you want to throw out there, you can come to us and we can help you put together that business or goal plan. And then if the cash flow or the balance sheet or some of the financials don't work, it's not, no, we can't do it right now. It's, we will help you on how to get it to a yes plan. So it might not be a right now thing, but it could be a later down the line thing. Next slide, please. Since our inception in 2019, when we first started doing our lending, we have reached 24 tribal nations. We have committed over $16 million in loan funds, and we have done about 239 loans so far. Next slide. We offer a variety of loan products and services that are all designed to increase the agriculture economy in country. We can do youth loans. We have our general loan, which is basically just a catch-all. That's where we put, like, if you want machinery and equipment, livestock, trucking. And then we also have an operating loan and line of credit product. We do have a land mortgage and down payment assistance product. Again, pairing that with technical assistance with the business and goal planning, succession planning, marketing, and things like that. We also do have our own eligibility that you would have to meet. One of them is you must be involved in the native agriculture field, anything on the food chain from initial production to retail. And our activities include, but are not limited to, farming, ranching, fishing, timber, retail, etc. Because our bylaws and policies we have right now, our funds support just the production side of agriculture. We try to stay away from the recreational side, which is like rodeo. We haven't done much of agritourism. I think that's an area that we would want to explore, but not yet. But again, it is okay to come to us with an idea. If it's not something that we can do right now, it may become down the line. Next slide. So this is our youth product. So we firmly believe investing in our youth. They are our future generation. So anything that we can do to help the youth, we try. We do have a loan limit for each age group shown there from 10 to 12. You can qualify up to a $5,000 loan, 13 to 15 up to $7,500. And then ages 16 through 18 is around 10,000. This works really well for our 4-H kids that want to do show animals, or even if they want to just start their own native ag business where they want to, purchase a couple of livestock to be able to help support, their family business. And then we can also pair it with an FSA loan. FSA does provide youth loans as well. And then our term can go up to 12 years of repayment. Again, we are very flexible since we are unregulated. We can do what we think works best for our youth.
Alyssa, it looks like Bob has a question for you.
Yep. I think you're on mute, Bob.
You're on mute.
I don't.
Oh, you have your hand up. So must have been an accidental keypad. Okay,
I'm
thanks,
sorry.
Melissa.
Okay.
You ready for a new slide?
Yep, continuing on. So with the loans, again, we do provide financial literacy training that we created specifically for ranchers. And then again, we are creating that youth-focused workbook this year. Okay. And then here's just our general product. This is the catch-all. This was created to help fill all the gaps that the producers might have in their operation. This is for clients 18 years of age and older. Again, we can do up to 12 years of repayment. We do have a loan limit of $250,000 per individual or per entity that that individual is tied to. It can be used for equipment, infrastructure, value-added operations, transportation, livestock, and to refinance current debt if you're paying a really high interest rate based on your credit score or because of the interest rates going up right now due to the Fed. We can refinance that to a lower interest rate. Right now, we're at 3.3%, and that's across the board. It doesn't matter what your credit score is. We do that to all of our clients and it is fixed, so it won't change. And then this general loan is also paired with technical assistance to help ensure the producer is experiencing success. We do have a specific financial literacy coursework specific to the livestock ranchers. Next slide. And then here's our operating and line of credit program. We realize that a lot of producers might have short-term needs, and we were happy to fill that gap as well. We can pair an operating loan with our general loan for a full circle servicing as long as it's under the $250,000 mark. Again, this is for clients 18 years of age and older. We can do up to a 12-month of repayment. And if you just need an operating loan because you don't want to pay those higher interest rates and go to your bank, you're more than welcome to come to us, even though you have your regular lender at a bank or another CDFI. That's totally fine as well. Again, this is paired with technical assistance to help that producer for success. Next slide. And then land mortgage and our down payment assistance product. So we know that land is complicated in Indian country, and we are ready to help solve the problem to access credit for those land issues, specifically around trust land. It is believed that trust land cannot be, nobody can put a lien on trust land, but that's not true. We actually work with another CDFI in our area that has done that before. So if these banks or these other lenders say, no, we can't touch trust land, that is not true. So we did do the workaround. We did the legwork on how to perfect a lien on trust land. So it is an option here. This product is for ages 18 years and older. We can do up to a 30-year repayment option. Again, the max limit is $250,000. We know that $250,000 is not a lot of money to lend for land. So that's where the down payment assistance comes in. If your original lender wants you to have a 15 to 20% down payment, you can come to us, and we are okay with being the junior lender on that mortgage. We would just have to consolidate with your other lender to figure out the lien positions and things like that. And then if you wanted to do like land and a building, like a combination type thing, we can also do that. Would also be a qualification there. We understand that in Indian country, our land is very highly fractionated. So we do have a loan program also, which is called our Harris Property Relending Program, which I will go into in a little bit. Next slide. And then we have two different repayment options for all of our loans. One is just your traditional repayment option. You see that at a bank. You know, you're paying principal and interest for a term, let's say, of 7 years at 3.3%. Oh, what happened? My slides disappeared. But going back into the traditional repayment, it's over 7 years at 3.3%. You are paying both principal and interest back to Ocupan. And then we have what is called our investment repayment option. Our investment repayment option can only be used for asset growth, which is either you want to grow your livestock herd or you want to pay down your debt to grow your equity on your balance sheet. We typically try not to do it for like our tractor loans or different pieces of equipment type loans or our land mortgages. But we can further discuss what repayment option works specifically for your operation to help for your success. Oh, my slides went away again. Having a little bit of technical-ish things going on.
There we go.
Oh, there we go. So again, just getting into that traditional repayment option, they are blended payments from the start. You're paying interest and principal all at the same time. Because we are unregulated, again, we can do longer terms. Typically, what you see at a bank is maybe 5 to 7 years. With ours, we can go from 7 to 12 years if we need to. It is great for equipment, infrastructure, and for people who are already at their max capacity. Next slide. And then here is our investment repayment option, also called our interest only repayment option. So this is set up on a 12-year term. Your first 5 years is interest only payments. And then after that 5th year, you start paying towards principal. This is our most unique and innovative repayment option. It allows producers to reinvest all of their profits into themselves or back into their operation. And it is designed to help that producer grow their balance sheet, whether that's, buying back livestock or paying off larger debts to build that equity. It allows for upfront capacity growth. So just depending on where you're at in your operation, if that is your all-around goal, which it is for most people, we would allow you to see the 2 different options side by side. We would set you up on the traditional and then set you up on the interest only and let you decide like, yep, this is my goal. This is how I'm going to get there if I choose the investment option, or no, I just want to stick with the traditional repayment option right now. The only thing with the interest only repayment is once you start it and you want to start paying towards principal, you can't go back and forth. So once that principal starts getting paid down, then you have to stay in the traditional repayment option. Okay, next slide. So this is just an example of our traditional repayment option. So if you were to borrow the full max of $250,000 over a 7-year term at an interest of 2.8, which we were at the end of last year, this is how much your loan payments would be for 7 years, around that $39,800 mark. And then it breaks it down how much interest you would pay back on that as well, which is around $28,000. Next slide, please. Okay, so here is our investment or interest only repayment option. Again, this is for a total of 12 years. Your first 5 years, you're paying interest only. This one is at 5.3% on $250,000. That payment is going to be around $13,250. With that lower repayment, basically what happens is our clients are able to take their profits at the end of the year and pay off their other debt, or buy more livestock, or get that tractor that they've been wanting to get debt-free, not having to take out another loan to help build their equity. And then by that 5th year, they should be able to be sustainable by then. They should have been able to grow their assets or grow their herd numbers to be able to make that larger payment of $39,000. During that blended payment option, then your interest rate goes down to that 2.8%. You're not always paying that 5.3%. So the way I explain this to my clients is this is kind of Ocupan investing in your operation for that first 5 years. Once you are getting up there and you have tremendous growth over those 5 years, that 6th year, you're going to start basically buying us out of your operation. And then by year 12, that operation is yours. Okay, next slide. So we do have a loan process, and we do go over this with all of our clients that we see. Right at the very beginning, we start with the discovery and intake phase. Basically, the loan officer gets to know you as a client and get to know you on your operation and how you have been operating so far. This is where you would complete the intake form. We would go over our eligibility with you, and then we do have a checklist for either individual borrowers, youth borrowers, business borrowers, and then one separated for our land mortgage and our down payment assistance. And then we provide technical assistance and application completion. So if you are new to a balance sheet or a cash flow, you don't know how to create one, we will sit down with you and we will go over everything with you and help you complete it. If you are, already established, experienced, and you have this information available at another lender or with another lender, you can submit that information so you don't have to recreate one. And then we basically sit down with you and verify all the numbers and go over everything and just provide an updated balance sheet or cash flow, whatever it may be. And then during this stage, that's when you'll complete like our application and then provide us with all of the documents on our checklist. And we are here to help you throughout the whole process. So once you see our checklist, don't be discouraged. It is a lot of information on there. You might already have it available, But if you don't, we are here to help you. We will either set up a Zoom call, we can set up a phone call, or we can do an in-person visit. Next slide. During that application process, that's also where we do the underwriting. So you will work directly with your loan officer. That's where you'll be in the most communication with them. Basically, again, they'll get to know your operation. We kind of see our clients as partners rather than me being your loan officer, you being my borrower. We want to help you get to the goals that you set for yourself. So if it's not a yes, we can do it right now, this is what you need to do to be able to come back to Ocupane to get to an approval status. But if you are approved for the loan, then we have the review and closing process. So this is where we create a loan narrative for you. We submit it to our loan committee, which is made up of 3 board members. The loan committee will review it. They may or may not ask questions. We are your advocates as loan officers. We know your operation. We know what your goals are. So if there's questions that we can answer on your behalf, we will do it. If there's something out of the ordinary that would just came out of the blue and we don't really fully understand, we would give you a call and ask that question directly. And then once the loan committee, if they approve it, we would go into the loan closing documents. We've definitely explained everything on a loan agreement and a loan security agreement. We never leave anything out. We want to make sure that you as the borrower fully understand what you are signing. We never let any borrower sign without talking to a loan officer first. And then if you are denied for any reason at all, we will give you a reason with an opportunity to fix your application. So again, if it's not yes, these are the steps on how to get to a yes. And then we do an aftercare. Once your loan is closed, for disbursements, we don't disperse the funds all up front. We would like for you to create a budget. Within that budget, if you want to buy livestock, say, Melissa, I need $20,000 to go buy livestock, or I need $5,000 to buy hay. And then we also try to do as many site visits as possible. This is where we would go to your location of operation. We would just kind of sit down for an in-person visit and review everything there. We also do informal quarterly check-ins, whether that's a Zoom call or a phone call or a quick text or an email, just checking in to see how things are going. And then we also do annual financial reviews at the end of the year. This is where we would complete an updated balance sheet because we know balance sheets change all the time. And then we would try to project the next 3 years. So by year end, you should have your actuals of what you have spent throughout the year. And then we would sit down with you and go over the next 3 years. Again, technical assistance is provided when asked or even suggested if we think that you need it. Next slide. Okay, so here is the Harris Property Relending Program that I was talking about, specifically designed to help highly fractionated land. So the U.S. Department of Agriculture announced Ocupane as one of the intermediary lenders through the Harris Property Relending Program, also called the HPRP, along with Shared Capital Cooperative and the Cherokee Nation Economic Development Trust and Authority. This program provides access to capital to help producers find resolutions for landowners who have inherited land without a clear title or documented ownership to resolve heirs land ownership and succession issues on agricultural land. So in Indian country, it can also be used directly to solve highly fractionated land issues. So if, for instance, your grandmother passed away without a will and had, so many acres of land, that land gets fractioned up between all of her kids, or if she had a child that passed away, but they had kids, it just goes on and on and on and on. And you had one person that was interested in buying all of the land, that person can come to us, apply for this Harris Property Relending Program to buy out all of the percentages of ownership. So that way it just comes down to one landowner. Okay, next slide, please. There are 2 parts to the Harris Property Relending Program, of course, you would have to meet our eligibility, and then you would have to meet the eligibility of the Harris property. So it's any individual or legal entity with authority to accrue the debt and to resolve ownership and succession of a farm owned by multiple owners. It has to be a family member or heir at law related by blood or marriage to the previous owner of that property. You have to agree to complete a succession plan so that it prevents heirship moving forward. And then you also have to meet our eligibility, which is any individual or entity engaged in agriculture and food systems, including but not limited to growing, processing, distributing, or selling food and food products, with the goal of improving the Indian use of Indian resources in the service area, which is all throughout Indian country. You must be involved in the day-to-day labor operations and management decisions, unless you are temporarily uninvolved due to education or other extenuating circumstances. Next slide. Again, this funding may be used to resolve title issues by financing the purchase or consolidation of property interests and financing costs associated with a succession plan. This may also be included by buying out fractional interest of other heirs to clear the title, which would include like closing costs, appraisals, title searches, surveys, documentations, mediation, legal services, things like that. The loan funds may not be used for purchasing lands that don't have any title issues on, or buying out land that you don't have any current interest in. Next slide. And then we also do have other programs available other than just the loan side of things and the technical assistance. We do have a separate program department. We are always expanding our programming, and to the side is a list of things that we have already accomplished so far. We did a market study in 2022 that consisted of Native producers all throughout the US. The purpose of this market study was to determine what the unmet financing need is for Native producers amongst other barriers. We found that over $42 billion in unmet need for Native American producers. There was only 27% of participants who have a succession plan. 75% of those producers had off-farm income. 73% of producers needed financing to upgrade infrastructure or equipment. 51% Native producers expressed a need for additional training and technical assistance related to sustainability, climate change, and conservation planning. That market study is available on our website, which has the link there. And then we also try to do monthly webinars. And if you don't sign up for the monthly webinars, we do have the recordings available on our website as well. These webinars can be from succession planning to understanding your taxes to marketing and understanding your cash flow and balance sheet. They go more in depth with that. We do have a resource links for all things financial literacy on our website. We also have been able to do some scholarships these past 2 years. This year, we were able to offer around $21,000 scholarships to native ag recipients who were wanting to be in the the native ag industry. We do have an internship program every year, which involves some hands-on learning experience with Native CDFIs around ag lending, programming, things like that. This internship helps our youth with building a resume, understanding their paycheck, how to do cash flows, how to create their own balance sheet and put together a short business plan. And then we also have our garden program, which is a month-long program that happens in the early spring. It supports gardeners in developing their garden for value-added products. And then we also have, we've been looking for a program officer and an administrative officer. These two positions, the program officer is in charge of the development of Ocupane's climate smart and regenerative agriculture programming. The ideal candidate for this position will be a self-starter, have good communication skills and teamwork. And then the administrator officer is in charge of assisting in all departments at Ocupone. We would like them to be self-motivated. We would like them to have problem-solving skills to tackle administrative duties. And for the right candidates, you may or may not be able to be remote. We do have some remote workers here at Ocupone since we service the whole US. And next slide, please. Here is our contact information, our website. If you scan the code there, it will take you directly to our website. We also do have succession stories on our website from previous clients. One specifically that sticks out is Sakari Farms. They are one of our value-added producers. And we were able to help her with a commercial kitchen and a greenhouse. And then if you have any questions, if you want to know more about Ocupone, please visit any of our social medias, which are listed there. You can always contact the office and talk to me directly. I'm stationed here in the office in Eagle Butte, South Dakota. But again, we do have virtual workers located all throughout the US. And here is where I can answer any questions, if there is any questions.
Thank you, Melissa, very much for that. We are out of time, so we don't have any big opportunities for questions. Go ahead and send an email out to any of these folks. I'll put their contact information up in the last slide. There's Alyssa, Bob Marshall, Melissa Curley, and myself are all right there. Also wanted you to know that we do have our AITC agritourism, or I always say agritourism, our tourism conference is coming up in October. There's the information about that. We'd love to see some of your faces there. And then a couple of other opportunities. We have the case studies. If you go to the resources page on ienta.org, you will find the case books that take you through setting up an agritourism business. NativeAmerica.travel is aimed at or pointed at the traveler with all kinds of opportunities for travel, visits, what am I thinking? Itineraries and things like that. If you'd like to be listed on that, please let me know and we'll get you started. It is free for Native American businesses. And then Shop Native, that lower picture shows the various different ways that you can feature products that you have. And again, that also is free for agritourism based businesses. And you can email me if you'd like to know more about that. Again, I'm Kay Hepler at ienta.org. Sure appreciate all of you. Thank you, Melissa. Thank you, Bob. Thank you, Alyssa, who had to leave. Unfortunately, she had another appointment. And then I would like to also mention Bianca Mitchell and Sherry Bowman, who have been running the scenes from the back, and they do a fantastic job keeping us moving forward. I won't keep anybody any longer. I know we're over our time, but I sure appreciate you participating with us today and enjoy the rest of your week. Thank you.